Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cyber House Party, and welcome to this session on neurodiversity and why neurodivergence is important. With me tonight, I've got a very impressive panel. First of all, we have Nicola Whiting, MBE, Chief Strategy Officer from Titania, and UK Cyber Neurodiversity Group Board Member. Nicola, good evening, welcome.
Hi, Mark.
Next, we have Emma Philpott, MBE, CEO of the IASB Consortium and founder of the UK Cyber Security Forum. Good evening, Emma.
Hi.
And then we have Rob Domain, CEO and founder of E2E Assure. Hi, Rob.
Hey.
And last but by no means least, we have Steve Morgan, Security Infrastructure Engineer at E2E Assure. Welcome, Steve.
Hi.
Well, thank you, everybody. Let me start by asking a question about the importance of a common understanding of neurodiversity. I sense a lot of passion and talk within the industry to actually make a difference. I rarely meet anybody that doesn't have this on the agenda or has talked about it at some point. But really, for the uneducated, what are the fundamental understandings that we need of this topic in order to help us move forward? And so, Nicola, if I can come to you first on that question, please.
Sure. I think one of the challenges is that inclusion in our area, and the realization that diversity in thought, neurodiversity with its true meaning, is the antidote to groupthink, which means diversity in thought is automatically then linked to greater opportunities for a business and greater resilience for a business. However, how we often talk about neurodiversity is what we mean by neurodiversity isn't everybody, which it should include. It's actually just the autistic and dyspraxic and dyslexic and the people that often self-determine themselves as neurodivergent. And that's a challenge in itself, because neurodivergent came from the language of diagnostics. And again, that's pretty early in our understanding of things. And one of the challenges that I've got as an autistic person, being in the diagnostic and statistical manual and having a diagnosis, is that I feel like we're on a parallel journey in a way to homosexuality. Now, I was born in 1971. And so I was born while being a homosexual was still classed as a mental disorder in the same book that we're now classed in. And it wasn't actually removed till 1973, where they just went, actually, it's just part of the human process of we have different sexualities. And I think that that's where we will eventually get to, but we're very, very far away from that at the moment, although we do divergent, as in came to different paths. There is an element of, as soon as that word is mentioned, that there is a subset of people that want to fix that divergent, as in it's divergent from normal rather than just an alternate way of thinking that has its benefits and helps deliver groupthink benefits in terms of fixing it.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that. And Emma, what are your thoughts around the fundamental aspects of neurodiversity and neurodivergence that we all need to understand?
Well, so really it's the fact that, I came to it because I found that there are some people whose difficulties in terms of understanding what everyone else thinks is the right thing to do, understanding unwritten social rules, means that they find it difficult for employment and they find it difficult to join in with the rest of life. So that's what made me realize that some people thought differently. But actually, it is about the fact that everybody is an individual and everybody thinks differently to other people. Some people have difficulty with the understanding social rules. Other people have difficulties in other ways. But everyone is an individual with their own crises and their own happinesses and their own issues and their own barriers. The issue becomes when those barriers prevent you from getting a job, where you're very clever, you're able to do the job, but there are artificial barriers in place that are to do with the way you think and the way that companies currently operate that prevents you from being happily employed. And certainly I know lots of adults with Asperger's who are also very depressed and have very, very low self-esteem. That's not because of their Asperger's, that's because they're unemployed and because the world doesn't appreciate the fact that they're very, very talented. So that's kind of where we've come from it. It's saying these are artificial barriers. Let's try and get rid of the artificial barriers so that everybody can use their knowledge and their skills to the best of their ability.
Okay, thank you. Rob, so Emma talks there about the high levels of unemployment within neurodiverse area. As an employer, what do you think that what do other organizations need to understand as the fundamental building blocks to have an active neurodiverse employment process?
That's a good question. I don't think I'm learning myself as I go along. But yeah, thanks to Emma and co, it's getting a bit easier. But I guess the key thing, picking up on what Emma said, was, I guess the way I started this was I met Emma and at an event. I got talking to some of the people. Like Steve, you were there, weren't you, Steve?
Yeah.
And just how I started to realize actually there's quite a lot of talented people in this room. And I then kind of wondered why they were unemployed or what it was all about. I just kind of walked into it. And I realized actually it was an opportunity for the business to find some talent. So I come at it as a business perspective, which is probably slightly different. And I guess when I started to look into it, I thought it was about something we had to do specifically. But it isn't really. It's more about making sure the business is a good employer and attracts talents that may come from different backgrounds.
Steve, if I could come to you, we'll talk about your journey through the program and getting a job in a little while. But first of all, from a thinking perspective, have you been in a position where you've been frustrated at everybody else's lack of understanding about your position?
Yes, although I mean I've only fairly kind of about 3 years ago kind of discovered that I was neurodiverse. Up until that point, I thought my brain was just broken because I thought differently than most other people. There are occasionally people that I kind of really understood and got on with really well, but I didn't know why those particular people. But generally, I just thought that I thought differently. If there was a problem, I always tended to come up with a different way of coming to a solution, or a slightly different solution. I was the annoying person who at the end of the meeting, when everyone agrees that this is the way to go forward, will then kind of come up at the end and go, well, actually, what if we did this instead? I tended to come up with slightly different answers or slightly different ways of getting to the answers than most people that I was working with.
Nicola, if I could come back to you. This isn't just a cyber industry problem. It's not just a tech industry problem. What are the benefits to any organization in having that diverse thinking, do you think?
So exactly what Steve described, really. When you have everybody think in similar paths, then you're going to get less options of how to reach a specific goal. If we went back to the cyber, and that applies to anywhere, but if we went back to the cybersecurity industry, our industry that struggles so much to achieve its goals constantly, and we really only have two goals: create new stuff and protect the stuff we've created. And that really aligns with businesses. That's really what our industry does in very simple terms. It creates new innovation and protects what we've made.
Yeah.
And essentially, when you look at that, if you're creating new innovation, do you just want the same people in the room? Because you're not going to have the wide range of potential options. If you're defending against that innovation, well, who are you defending against? So if you look at it, there was a really great book called The Art of War, which was written before Jesus. I mean, according to Sun Tzu. And he said, to defeat your enemy, you must know your enemy. I'm paraphrasing wildly here, but you've got to understand where they're coming from. Now, if we just went on to that, which is such a big goal, such a big thing in our industry, well, our adversaries, don't come in one flavor. They're not all neurotypical white guys. They are neurodiverse in terms of they might be ADHD, they might be dyslexic, they might be dyspraxic, they might come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, they're going to have different sexualities, they're going to have different thought processes, they're going to take different shortcuts to us. So if we have some chance of being our most innovative and our most resilient, then we have to have a similar makeup in our arsenal of brains.
And Rob, you E2E offer a security monitoring service, so you're on the defender's side of the fence, to Nicola's point there. How does that diverse thinking help you as an employer to the services that you do?
Pretty similar to what Nicola said. Basically, if you want to be the best at what you do, and we certainly do, then you need the right culture in the business, and that's driven by your people. And the more diverse your people are, the better they are at thinking and innovating. And they've got different skills, as we just described, and we want them all. We want all the skills, not just a section of them. Particularly when you've got things like COVID going on. You need an agile business that can innovate constantly or die, as they say. And to innovate, you need lots of different thinkers, because the solution you think of probably needs two other people to think of a different one before you get the right one.
Yeah, sure. So Emma, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
IASME, certainly being a very diverse company, we have to work hard at getting along together, because people are always thinking of different things. You know, people offend each other, people disagree with each other, and we have to work to get along together. But actually, that's a good thing, because it means that there's always someone thinking of a different thing, always someone thinking of a more innovative way to do things, and we're looking at it from all different perspectives. So I think that IASME is a better company for it, but we do have to work hard at it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think every industry, every organization can benefit from having a wide variety of views, a wide variety of opinions, because how do you know if you've actually decided on the best route to take in any organization, really, without having a range of views to then come together to form what is going to be your best option? So
I wanted to kind of raise some of the differences between, I call it the Adalto group, you know, the autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, or, you know, ADHD. So when you start looking at the differences, physiological differences, the way our brains are made up, tend to create certain things and ways of thinking. So for example, it's often said that dyslexics tend to have an ability to think quite visually, to do really good big picture thinking, which would tend to lead them to be really successful entrepreneurs. And indeed, when you look at how many people like Richard Branson and people like that are very successful entrepreneurs that are dyslexic, it would bear out that there is that natural benefit that they can harness.
Emma, could you just take a minute or so just to talk about the program of activity that you created in order to help make the neurodiverse talent more employable?
Yes. So we noticed that there were lots of neurodiverse people that without work. But not only that, but when you get beyond the level of sort of college age, there becomes very, very little that you can do if you are neurodiverse and unemployed. And so we knew lots of different people in the Worcester area that fell into that group. So we decided to try and do something about it. And we started a free training course based in Worcester, actually, a very unlikely place, which was open to any unemployed neurodiverse adult. And we had lots of people come along, and they were aged between 19 and 50. And we were really sort of learning as we went. So we had a great relationship with Immersive Labs, who gave us access to a free neurodiverse platform, which really we built the course around. And so everybody on the course got access to the Immersive Labs online training facility, which is amazing. And then we asked for volunteers from the cybersecurity world. We had the most amazing response. Really senior, experienced people from the biggest of companies and the smallest of companies came to Worcester and gave masterclasses. It really was the kind of training that you couldn't buy. But equally, we also had a full-time welfare person who had experience with neurodiversity, who was there to support all the people on the course and talk to them about any barriers they felt, any anxieties. Also, we had a quiet room. So at any point during the training, if people felt overwhelmed, they could just go and sit in the quiet room by themselves for as long as they wanted. We ran this for about 2 years, and we trained up more than 40 people. And we ran a pilot with 4 people, and the results were amazing. I mean, we didn't know if it was going to work, but then I remember we had a meeting with Rob afterwards, and Rob's team were very happy and wanted to do more.
And Rob, this can't have been easy. Never mind the passion that you have to want to do something. You know, this must have been a significant change.
Yeah, there's loads of challenges, weren't there, Emma, really? I mean, the first thing was there's no kind of blueprint to follow. So there's no kind of guidelines to look to, or you know, how we go about this. So starting off was quite difficult. And we realized straight away that the distance was a barrier. We couldn't, you know, how are we going to travel? Because it's quite a long way to Malvern Hills.
Yep.
First time I went, okay, it's quite a long way, this. It's quite a long way away. So, but really, it's there's a lot of uncertainties, aren't there, starting something. How do you interview people? Interview processes aren't really what you need to be doing. Normal processes, there's loads of unknown things as an employer that you might get wrong really easily. So you think, well, I'm just going to get this completely wrong. You know, trying to be too specific about something. You know, so basically, the advantage was that we had ASME and Emma and the team, and we decided, as Emma says, to just reuse all of that infrastructure. But since, I mean, the lessons are that, I guess, the challenges are that it's not like normal recruitment, and you're going to miss the talent if you think your normal recruitment process is going to find the right people. And then you're going to have to adapt your whole business in some way, but that's a massive positive. Because Emma says, you're going to have strange arguments and strange looking emails that you don't understand that need a second look before you react in a certain way. So it teaches a business quite a lot about people management.
And Steve, what was your experience like going through this? Was it a breeze, or was it a challenge for you?
It's very much been a kind of supported process of going through the training and then working for IASME and then moving on to working for Rob. And now within E2E, then I've moved on from the initial role, and I'm now working in a kind of a general security infrastructure role, which fits more in with my kind of general IT background that I've had. So it's all been a kind of progressive, and it's been a learning, and I think everyone's learned all the way through, because at every stage we'd have to kind of admit that we didn't really know what we were doing next. So it's all built from that first point of learning and then building and then getting more people involved and learning and building. So I think by now it's actually quite a mature process.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Nicola, so it sounds like we're making some really good progress, and I'm sure there's lots and lots of other really good examples of success stories like this. But nonetheless, the statistics about unemployment across the neurodiverse spectrum is still high. What's the future hold for this area, and what should businesses and individuals be doing a lot more of, do you think?
So I think one of the things that I'd want to raise really are just general good business practices. So neurodivergent people, i.e. people that aren't the majority, which are neurotypical people, tend to have different requirements. You know, like if you're dyslexic, there are certain fonts that can help quite often, and if you're dyspraxic, you know, you might have issues with or challenges with balance that need to be addressed in part of your safety assessments. But actually there is something more fundamental than that. So recently a teacher of primarily neurotypical children introduced the sort of framework that you'd normally put in place for somebody who is, say, autistic. So there was a quiet space. Well, what happened in the classroom told everybody in the class. So she universally adopted the sort of practices that you'd give to autistic children. Everybody in the class was told, this is what we're going to do next. This is pre-preparation. So anybody with reflective thinking would also benefit from that. And what she found from study was actually the whole class benefited. Now, if you take that into modern business, so quite often some of the biggest challenges when you look at studies done by you know, those kind of people that did First Break All the Rules, which is an amazing book on how to get things done and how to motivate people to be high-performing teams. One of the challenges that most people have is not knowing what the business is doing, is that communication piece. You know, that's one of the most typical problem areas for any business. Now, the difference is, for somebody who's autistic, that might almost be an essential. If you don't communicate with me, my level of anxiety is going to be so high, it's not going to make me an effective employee. But actually, if you adopt practices that are beneficial to everybody, then actually the whole business benefits. We need to stop thinking about this as a pocket of people that we respond to, and think about this in terms of business practices. And should we look at them and go, why do we still do it that way? Why do we still surprise people at interview with sets of questions? Isn't that a bit 1960s Mad Men? You know, why aren't we going, actually, that's not what we do to people in a daily basis. We would, as much as possible, give them as much warning as possible so they can give their best selves and come up with the best options. So why aren't we doing that when we employ them?
Sure.
All things like that, really.
So, well, I'm very positive. I think that there's so much talk about it. People have really recognized the value of diversity, and it's led by government organizations as much as anything. And, you know, the more that they encourage their subcontractors in particular to take this seriously, I think the more it will actually happen. So, I mean, at the moment, we hear from a lot of companies that talk a lot about diversity, but don't really do it. You know, they like to talk about it. E2E are, you know, very, very outstanding from all the companies we've seen, that they have put a massive amount of effort into taking the next step and pushing forward with it. And it shows what a great company they are. And I think they've really benefited. But we need more companies that do that. So people are talking about it. People are beginning to take action. And the government is encouraging them, which is great. But I think also we have to make it easy for them. So people are running companies, and that, of course, is their primary aim is to not go bust and make a profit and employ people. Of course, that's their primary aim. They're not going to then also take on neurodiverse people if it takes lots and lots of effort that isn't towards their primary aim. So we have to make it easy for them to take on not just neurodiverse people, but people, diverse people from all over the place. We have to give them instructions and support and just make it easier for them. So I think it's great. We're on a path and it's going to get better and better. But we all have to recognize that it can be difficult. And so we do need to put things in place to make it easier.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Rob, I guess a final word for you. You know, you've clearly made your recruitment process and your organization diverse in nature, and that had its challenges. What would you say to any aspiring startup or CEO now?
Yeah, so I think the key point is that everybody who started the program is still on it. Has not only sort of become either full-time or pretty much full-time, but has also had quite a life-changing experience as part of the program. So the individuals that start the program are valuable and do provide value to the business pretty quickly, as Steve says. So the program's been running over a year, and I've almost forgotten that we started it. It's normal now, and it's nothing different in the way that these days it's just normal for us that this is happening, and we're recruiting more and more people. So I guess don't underestimate the changes, but also don't be frightened of them, because as Nicola says, it's good business what we're talking about, and a good business with a good culture will be able to accommodate all sorts of diversity. This is just a particular type that fits cyber, but it's not exclusive. And you're not trying to solve one problem with this. You're just trying to improve your business. And as Emma says, actually, you know, if you think longer term strategically about being the best in your category, then you want the best people, and this is how you go about it. Therefore, in the long run, it'll prove to be the most valuable decision you ever made, because you've got assets that other people don't, and that's the way I see it. So I'm not going to let anyone else employ them.
Absolutely.
All come to me.
Yeah, so Steve, Rob described you as an asset there, probably one of his best actually, but it's true. So you've added a lot to the organisation. What would you say to other employers, you know, looking to dive into this area and make a go of being more inclusive?
I think it really is that, yes, you are going to have to put some effort in. You can't say that this is going to be easy, but I think the kind of, when the risk versus reward equation is totally imbalanced. So you're kind of, for a small amount of effort, there are kind of companies like me that are kind of helping, that will help. I still have a weekly catch up with welfare person from ASME, which I still find very useful. So there is help available. There are companies that have started and that you can talk to gain some insights. I think the problem is, kind of a couple of years ago, nobody had really tried it. Lots of people had talked about it, but I think every organisation was slightly scared. So nobody was willing to kind of make the jump. But now you can say there are companies that have made that jump, have found positive kind of changes from the process. So it isn't something quite as unknown now. There is support available. You can learn kind of from how others have found it. So do it, make the changes.
Do it. You heard it from Steve himself, people. Nicola, Emma, Rob, Steve, really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you ever so much for sharing your insights with us. It's been amazing to talk to you. And I'm definitely sure that everybody watching this evening and listening will have got something out of that. So thank you very much, and hope to speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Bye.